Welcome to Something to Say, where we bring voices from diverse backgrounds who will share their unique stories and perspectives on finding their passion and provide insights on how you can find yours. Join us as host Greg DeShields guides us through this enlightening journey.
Welcome to Something to Say podcast, a unique platform that amplifies the voices of individuals from various backgrounds sharing their passion. I'm your host, Greg DeShields, and I'm pleased to bring you another episode. Thank you for joining us today. Today we speak with Fitz Spencer, co-owner of Honkytonk Wine Library in Devon, England. Fitz is an entrepreneur, mentor, and business leader with over 2 decades of experience across hospitality and entrepreneurship. Alongside his wife, Zoe, he is a global business partner with Zinzino, a Scandinavian biotech health and wellness company pioneering test-based nutrition, where he supports professionals and business owners in building leveraged ethical income streams aligned with long-term well-being and lifestyle freedom. Fritz started his work career in hospitality as a chef and traveled throughout the UK and Europe. He's also the co-owner of Honkytonk Wine Library in Devon, England, community-driven bars and event space known for doing things differently and bringing people together through food, wine, and conversation. Reconnected with his faith, Fritz is driven by a belief that success should enhance life, not consume it. While he doesn't consider himself a coach, he is deeply focused on mentoring individuals who are seeking balance, purpose, and sustainable income beyond the traditional career paths. Working within direct sales and network marketing, Fritz has earned a reputation for his authenticity, straight talk, and people-first leadership. His mission is simple yet intentional: to build income with purpose, health with intention, and a lifestyle aligned with true values led by faith and guided by God. Welcome, Fritz. Fritz, I am so glad you are joining us. And what's really interesting, which you can't see it, but I have a British castle on my other screen. And it's just wonderful to be able to interview you from the UK. As I've told you before, it's one of my favorite places.
Thank
So I'm
you.
glad that you're going to share some of your insights around hospitality with us today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh no, thank you. Thanks for being here. It's an absolute pleasure. I mean, even though you're thousands of miles away across the pond, as they say, but yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
I have to say it is important, certainly for our audience, to know that there's 2 things. Number one, the ability to use Zoom in a very practical way to reduce the distance. But the other is the power of LinkedIn.
Mm,
For everyone in the audience, they should know that we met over LinkedIn.
yeah, and LinkedIn's an amazing tool. I mean, and when you consider it's only I think it's 1.1 billion people use it. It's one of the smallest social media platforms out there, but meeting people like yourself and the quality that you meet is superb on LinkedIn.
Well, the funny thing as we talk, for me, it sounds like we've been old friends for quite some time. And I keep thinking to myself, no, we just met. It's not like I've
it's
known you forever.
it's the brotherhood across the pond. That's what it is. It's the brotherhood.
Well, I'm really anxious to take a deep dive in all the work that you've done. I think what's also really exciting for the folks in our audience to know is that you have a very unique perspective on the world of hospitality from the UK. And there are some similarities, but there are some unique aspects to it. So I think during the course of our conversation, we'll be able to raise some of that insight to our audience. But amongst the things that we love to do on our podcast is to follow some consistency and talk about things that have certainly shown the similarities and the connection that people have. So, in the beginning, we like to ask a few get to know you questions just to share some of your perspective on different things and certainly for our audience to get to know you. So, as it relates to you connecting with us across the pond, the first thing I would say to you is what is your favorite childhood memory?
Oh, wow. For me, I mean, I'm 60 years young, so for me, it was my stepmom. Christmas, Christmas Day, or that Christmas period. She's one of the reasons why I went into catering. One of the reasons why I became a chef. The food was just sublime. She cooked from fresh ingredients. She was amazing. And Christmas Day was just an event. It was a family feast. 10, 15, 20 people around the table, all around the house. It became something we look forward to as kids, which I think we've lost a little bit that as time
Mhm,
goes on. We
mhm.
all say that because we reminisce a lot, but Christmas Day with mom and family was superb.
Wow. Amongst the things that I enjoy most recently about my visits to London is to make the visit shortly after Thanksgiving, but just before Christmas when they've started putting up a lot of the Christmas decorations. And I gotta say, your introduction and the tradition around Christmas really is something that I gotta be honest with you is something to behold. It just is so incredibly fulfilling to see a lot of the historical aspects of it and the traditions. I do know about crackers and how we're supposed to do this.
Oh, you've got to have the table set. You've got to have the table set.
But from your perspective, just on that particular memory, how would you say that that celebration of Christmas has maybe changed as maybe you've looked at it in the UK or perhaps in other countries?
I think it wasn't about presents. It wasn't about giving. It was about being together. It was about being together. And so some of the family members you may not seen for a year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever it is. It was about sitting around the table, having some fun, getting a little bit merry as well. There's times when we chose to have presents, but the presents wasn't the main thing. I was hoping to see my granddad again coming from Jamaica. I was hoping to see my aunt or and the food my mum cooked, my stepmother cooked. That to me was Christmas. And I think because the way the world has changed now, remember, I'm 60 years young, and when you think now, both parents are out working, they're working very, very hard. So the dynamics of Christmas in
Mhm.
a lot of households, especially in the UK, has changed. It is very materialistic. It is very short time, one day, and it's back to work. So that's the difference with what's changed
Wow,
from then till now.
wow, interesting. All right, so let's kind of shift gears a little bit. And this particular question is one that we have found certainly serves as an incentive or puts things in perspective for a lot of individuals that we speak to. So, what was your biggest failure and what did you learn from that experience?
Wow, my biggest failure. We have a term in the UK called Charlie Bigspun. In other words, I thought I knew it all. I thought I could do what I want, when I want, and how I want, and I didn't listen to anybody else. And subsequently, in my I've been married. This is my second marriage. When I was my first marriage, we lost our marriageable home, our family home, my first home, and that was down to me because I thought I could break the mold from just working for someone and go out there for myself. And it nearly broke me, Greg. At that time, it nearly broke me because I thought I was a failure, I was a loser. I had one child at the time. We was homeless, so we was managed to get onto the back onto the rental ladder to get back on. So that to me is a bit of a sore throat because it was my mistake. It was my ego that lost that home.
It's interesting though when we have the conversation and individuals reflect on those particular experiences, how it allows you to become far more resilient as you move forward,
Mhm,
and how you even make decisions differently, that you have a greater perspective and maybe even more specific forethought about
mhm.
what might be the ramifications of it. But I appreciate you sharing that because
Sure.
it's not an easy subject to share,
No,
but
it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. And what I learned from that, Greg, was I should have understood my values and my beliefs before I stepped out into the business world to try and be, this captain of the industry that I thought I was, but I
Mhm.
wasn't. So I learned to slow down and just get a little bit of clarity moving forward.
But as they say, we learn from our failures. It makes us better and stronger and much smarter when it comes to making decisions. All right, so this question, I think for you is going to be extremely interesting because we've asked a number of people here in the United States, but in your particular case, it takes on even more of an interesting perspective. So, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would that be and why?
For me, it's
And you may have to explain who they are because we may not have a clue.
yeah. Well, no, well, this one everybody knows. And I thought, do I go for someone that in business? Do I go for someone that's on TV? And the one that I want to ask questions, and you may people may think it's a laugh or whatever, and people may go, "Oh, it's Jesus." Now
Wow.
that may sound, and it's not because of his religious values that man had, that amazing human being. It was his leadership, his humility, his courage, his purpose. You know, and when I want to break it down, he served people, not status. He built systems, not people. And what he built was communities before institutions. And for me, when we think where we are today, it's a fast pace. And what he did as well, he measures success by impacting someone else's lives. What impact did they give? And when we think when we climb up that ladder, that corporate ladder, that business ladder, what are we giving? And it wasn't about titles or wealth, it was about what impact.
Hmm.
And me being the ex-chef, of course, I'm going to do the cooking. Jesus, sit down. I've got my robe, I've got my pots and pans, and I'm ready to go. And there's some questions, and it's not about me finding answers, what everybody would want to ask. It's about how did he lead without losing himself? Because I'm 60, when I think how many times I've gone up the ladder, because there was a moment in my life that I pulled away from my faith. I pulled away from my belief in people, my friends, belief in me. So how do you, Jesus, go forth and grow without losing yourself?
Hmm.
And the other one I was said, how do you keep grounded? Because as we grow in stature in business, as we grow to be influencers in some way, somehow, as we go, we forget about them growing pains and we forget where we've come from.
Hmm.
And by doing so, sometimes we can get a little bit arrogant, a bit like I did, me Charlie Big Spuds, but I can do what I need to do. And one of it is how do you do things and serve people without abandoning the few that need your help?
Hmm.
These are the questions I want to sit down. Now, I could have gone to so many different business people that I admire, but I want to ask because I think business must comes from the heart, the gut, and other people. It must be that way. So yeah, definitely be Jesus. What I will cook, I don't know. Whether he's vegetarian, whether he's I don't know. So
I was going to ask you that, but I will tell you this. We've had a number of people who respond that they would love to sit down and have a conversation with Jesus. And we did actually have one person who did want to talk to him about leadership or what does it mean to give of yourself. Like they had a real deep perspective of that. I did have one woman though who was amazing. Her name is Merlinda Henry, and she's a meeting planner for the Full Baptist Gospel organization. And when I asked her, she said, "You know, I wanted to say Jesus, but I thought it might be too churchy." I said, "Not at all." I said, "I thought it was an excellent, excellent answer." But we do get some great responses, and you're certainly not alone. And it was nice to see that both from the US and from the UK, Jesus still
could you
resonates.
mention her name again? Because I would love to watch that podcast.
Merlinda Henry, she is on the board for the National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals, and I'll send you a link to all of that. She is an absolutely amazing lady. So All right. So, from our listeners' perspective, everyone's going to want to know your story. And I want to have you spend a little time and tell us who you are. But there are a couple of real standard questions that we like to ask. So, let's just start with some of the standard ones. So, how big is your inner circle?
Not that big. No, I I have abundance of connections and associations. A lot coming from my social media platforms, from LinkedIn, from people when I was a chef and traveled up and down the UK and abroad. But my inner circle, I'm very guarded with my peace, and that's been for the past few years because sometimes when you open up and let too many people in, you're quite torn. For me, my inner circle is quite small, and that's intentional, because my inner circle, I've got their ear, they've got my ear, they'll advise, they'll tell me when I'm being stupid. And that's the closeness I want with people who become in that circle of mine.
There are some people who actually started calling it their front row. So, as you kind of think,
Oh, I'm using that. I'm using that.
it's all reserved seating. So,
I'm using that one.
who has had the most influence in your life?
Now, I'm hoping you've not had this because a lot of people are going to think I'm arrogant, and please, I'm not. And they're going to explain what I'm going to say. Me, I'm the most influential. And the reason is this. I've talked about my inner circle, but when I meet people like yourself who's had a journey, and as we get to know each other with other conversations, I'm going to be the one to nurture that information and bring it into my life.
Mm,
And it's going to be for the better.
mm,
So the biggest influence I get is me being more controlled of who I let in, who I speak to, and bringing it in because I have to learn every day. I
mm,
want to be the best version of me tomorrow, the next day. And I've made some dreadful decisions in my life,
mm.
dreadful decisions, Greg. So for me, I have to take responsibility. So the biggest influence is me. And I know some might say, oh, wow, but it's me.
Wow. But you live with yourself, and ultimately, the person you spend the most time with, who probably would have the most influence, is yourself. So it certainly makes sense. But that, as a segue to our next question, makes big sense. So, what was really the best year of your life, and what was the worst year of your life?
The best year, I should say it was my kids. And it was my kids. But the best year for my life because it brought perspective and purpose and me on the right track. And because I'm a relationship man, I'm talking about a romantic relationship type. So it's 2013. I met a remarkable woman. She's now my wife. And that lady was grounded. She was grounded, and I needed to be clipped. And she was a remarkable change for me. And from that moment, I've become a better person. In other words, I used to curse a lot. I used the things I used to do was I was very belligerent, and people in front of me was slow. I was impatient. She showed me peace. She showed me how to slow down and appreciate the things that I've got because I never appreciated any form of success that I've got. I was very standoffish, Greg. If you said, Fitz, I like your suit, I would change the subject very, very quick.
Hmm,
Now, thank you, Greg. Yes, it is a nice suit.
wow.
That's why on that day, I can remember it, 18th of December 2023, I met that lady.
So it's interesting how you kind of describe that, but what's really important in kind of understanding how someone becomes balance of who you are as a person, to with all the confidence that you have in yourself, it's also about who you can share that with and
Mm,
how it allows you to make different decisions or make decisions in a way that are not necessarily solely about you, but the ability to share this life with someone else is priceless. So I don't need to tell you that. But I do want to ask you before I ask you some industry questions is, there are probably going to be people who are going to say, Craig, why are you interviewing this guy? So for aside from having like a really cool name, right? Can you give us like a quick synopsis and tell us who you are and why?
Sure, sure, sure. Just let me reply back to the other the question. It was my worst
Oh, I'm
year.
sorry.
No,
Yes.
no, no, it's fine. No, my worst year was 1971, and it was my birth mother. She had a stroke, and she was in a coma for a number of years. Now, it wasn't until I started writing my book of my journey that I realized that what changes that made in my life. And if I was to say, it was around 11, 12 when I started pulling away from Christ.
Mm.
And that gap was that year. So for me, the 71, I mean, she's no longer with us now, but 71 was, I was 6 years old, and it was me who found my mother. My mother passed out, so it was me, and she had a stroke. So yeah, 71 was the worst. So anyway,
Before you say that, it's interesting when you think of some common connections you have. So, my mother passed away in 2007, and I was just so mad with God that I wanted to boycott Christmas. So we flew to London and we took a train over to Paris and tried to, drown my sorrows in a nice, European trip. But it was interesting through that because I was able to kind of get a clearer understanding of what impact that had had on me and what it meant that I needed to do with, this particular experience. But it is through those tragic times, though, that you also find that it creates a new path and you just have
yeah.
to have your eyes open to it. But yeah, I actually have photos of the makeshift Christmas tree that I did, even though I didn't want to do one, but that's another story. But but yeah, so tell us about you.
Well, me, and I've mentioned it, I'm 60 years young, originally born in Manchester. My parents come from the West Indies. And I don't know if anyone of you, any of the people listeners or people who are going to hear this, is that my father came over. He was what's called the Wimrush. He was the second generation coming from Jamaica of the West Indies to the UK. And then little old me was born with my mother back in Manchester. And I wanted to be an actor to start off with when I first left school and went for my college days, and I wanted to be an actor. But I realized that my grammar of speaking out aloud from a script was dire. It was poor. So I thought, let me knock that on the head, and I became a chef. And boy, did that change my life. I became a chef, and what I did, I wanted to see the world, and it took me all over the place. And I worked up and down the UK, spent some time in beautiful Italy, and then I changed into the wine industry. So my
Mm,
knowledge of wine has always been that took me around America, it took me around Europe in the wine industry, and that's what I've where we've developed in our business today. I have two boys, 34, no, 35 and 33, two older boys. I'm a grandfather, should I say. I've got all girls, all girls. So yeah, so like everybody else, I've had challenges in life, but and I've always used to block them off. And while going through the book I'm trying to put together, I realized that that's what made me the person I am now, of holding things back and running from situations, is because of the challenges that I've gone through. But
mm.
my life has been good. I mean, we brought a rum brand onto the market called Honkytonk Spiced Rum. So I've always been entrepreneurial, and you're gonna laugh at this, Greg. What made me want to be and change my career? Do you remember the film Trading Places?
Yes, I do.
And one of the reasons is I wanted to be that bloke. I wanted to be money Mr. Winslow. I wanted to be in the briefcase. I want people to recognize me. Look, I'm doing what. That's what made me go into one of the things what made me want to go into business.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting connections that, as you tell your story, that we have. But the one that kind of stands out is your perspective and your point of view of the hospitality industry and the intimacy that you had it as a chef, and certainly as an entrepreneur in the beverage side. But at a high level, can you discuss some of the misconceptions that you'd like to clear up about our industry? I know you and I talked about a lot of hot button issues, but is there some things that you'd like to maybe clear up that,
Sure,
haven't.
sure. I mean, as you know, I'm into industries, but if we talk about hospitality industry, and some people may shout at this, but the customer is not always right. It's not. We as owners of establishments, we run on low margins, especially in the UK. UK is having a hard time in hospitality as we speak. But when I think about understanding your own brand, understanding where you are, you know, because if you keep your values to your business, it will pay off in the long run. So the myth is about how to challenge customers in a rightful, respectful way, especially when you get reviews, especially when people are coming in looking for a mistake, a freebie, so they can get discount.
Mm.
So for me, that is a misconception that the customer is always right, because they're not. You have to believe in your brand, believe in the segmentation of the hospitality industry you're going to. So if we take the UK at the moment, there's two sectors that are growing. One is corporate starting to lift again at the moment, right? And the other one is the cafe scene, different type of cafe. The restaurant and what we class as the pub wine bar trade that I'm in
Mm.
is in decline. I think it's 1 in 4 pubs are closing daily in the UK. So there's a change, but it all comes down to understanding your brand, understanding we can challenge customers in a respectful way. And a lot of hospitalities cave when they cave in to give discount, to give money back, to say they're right when they're not. So we have to be strong enough with courage to rebuttal a customer who's really looking for something different than rather than spending a good time in your restaurant, bar, or whatever. Yeah.
Right. It's interesting too, as we kind of look at the evolution of hospitality or service, customers are far smarter now than they were before. And a lot of times they were pretty much reliant upon us in terms of the promise of what their experience would be. But we had a bit of a controlling point of view because, once again, the customer wasn't as knowledgeable and as insightful as they are today. So perhaps maybe we did have to lean into that idea that the customer is right. However, customer is a whole lot smarter. They've got a whole lot more access to do a deeper dive and assessment and evaluation, which means maybe that relationship, as you pointed out, is changing. The dynamics between customers and entrepreneurs or hospitality professionals who deliver service, maybe because of that knowledge level of customers, that our interaction with them maybe needs to elevate it as well, and maybe not be so general to say that they're always right, because today they're not always right.
That's true. I remember when I was young, when I first came in, and it was that silver service, especially in the UK, of waiting on table, and it was about being looked after in a particular way. And I think the efforts of COVID, of the opening from COVID, has sort of changed the dynamics of what I call true hospitality. I want to serve you, Greg. Please sit down. Let me be your waiter. Let me be your server. I want to make sure you're happy. Are you okay, sir? Check back. The amount of people we try and do that in our establishments, they don't want that anymore. They don't want you bothering them. Serve me, give me a drink, pay me a bill, and I want to go. I don't want to do that. And that is probably why because we came with apps, order an app from the table, from the food. I'm standing over there. Come and speak to me. Let me come and serve you.
Right,
No, I've got to put up this. I don't want to do that.
right.
I want to have to talk to you, find out a little bit about you, and I'm hoping we start going back to that of actually having a waiter or waitress or someone I'm speaking to when I'm putting my wine order in, when I'm putting my food order in. I don't want to use an app, but there's still a lot of places that still have that
Right.
pre-COVID. Yeah.
That's a perfect segue to the next question that I wanted to ask you. In terms of, innovation and the breakthrough of technology, and here in the US, AI has certainly impacted our industry significant, and maybe you can share some insights of how it's impacting the industry in the UK. But is there any particular aspect of technology that you find to be exciting or does bring value to our
Yes and no.
industry?
I say this is because me and my wife, I've been in the hospitality industry for over 3 decades, nearly 4 decades now, and we're on a journey of moving out of that, and that's with our other business. Although what's made us move out of that really is because we're sticking to our guns with what we've been building for the past 6 years, and that's biotech nutrition or test-based nutrition. And why is that? It's because the foods of what we're consuming now, processed foods, Greg, it's killing us. It really is. Now, I know you're going to get some experts who you've probably spoke to about the value of food that we're eating, the process of food that we're eating. But when we think the US and the UK, although we've got a lot of technology there, we're one of the most unhealthiest nations on God's planet. We consume so much processed food. So this is why we've been sort of pivoting our hospitality business over to this sector to make sure people are aware of what's out there to test themselves, to making sure what they're consuming is correct. Because the food that's coming into our plate at this moment in time, unless you cut from ingredients and not from products, what I mean by that is I've been around to many of friends, I'm not going to mention just in case they're listening, they'll get a bit of chicken, they'll seal it on a skittle, open a jar of Dormeal sauce and pour it over. Now they assume that's cooking. That's not cooking. That's cooking from products, and that's from processed foods. And Greg, even if you look into your statistics in the USA, it's growing fast. It's growing faster in the way of that our health is dropping everything, and it shouldn't be, even with the technology that we've got. So that's probably a fundamental, a funny way of going about the technology that I'm hoping that's going to change, and it might react into bring it into the restaurants and the food trade to go back to cooking, because some of the big nationals are still using a lot of processed foods. Now I can mention a lot in the UK, some of the big nationals, they don't cook anymore. It's microwave, it's pinging, it's this, it's that. Everything's weighed out. Where's the creativeness in food? It's lost unless it's in the home. It's lost. For me, it's lost, Greg. So this is why we're diverting some of our business efforts into biotech test-based nutrition.
For many people, the convenience of processed foods have certainly made it more, I guess, widespread, but also from a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses, it's very cost efficient. So they tend to lean that way. But I do think, as you and I talked before, I think that evolution of new entrepreneur and new restaurateurs will perhaps be the ones who will certainly adapt some of what you've suggested in terms of, much healthier food selection. But I wanted to make sure we covered some other questions because you shared some that I thought were fantastic, and I'd love to get your insight about it. Now, we've certainly heard a lot about your background, but I am really curious about what was the moment in your journey that really forced you to rethink what success meant, and then how did you change the way that you would design the rest of your life to approach business?
This is pretty much recently over the past few years for me, because when I think money, we all need it. It's up there with fresh air. It's a byproduct of what we really want and what we really desire in life. And I realized, although I looked extremely successful on paper, Greg, I had the nice house, I had the stunning wife, we had the other holidays, but behind the scenes, Greg, I was exhausted. I was exhausted in real life. And we tend not to do is to have the ability to understand that break, because it wasn't fulfilling. But even though we get a little bit delusional and keep pushing until it's too late. And I've seen so many people, especially in the hospitality industry, work till they drop.
Right.
So what's the point? So I had to take a step back, Greg. I had to revalue my core values. So I took a step back and I had to design something. What was my core values? And one of it was my home. I realized my home was my core value after losing my home decades ago. And what underpins that is the relationship with my partner, the relationship with friends and family. Greg, you ever come to the UK, it'll be a pleasure having you and your husband as my guest. Please come round. And
Thanksgiving and Christmas of 2026. Yeah.
You'll be more than welcome. And one of the things that I realized, what has to come first is faith, family, health, freedom. Because if you're not looking for that within business, why are you in business? So I had to just revalue that space. that money is really a byproduct of what I want. I can only drive one car. I can only live in one house. Although on my previous marriage, we had two houses, but I can only live in one house. I can only live in one car. And the rest I can have fun with. The rest I can breathe. I can have friends around. Because isn't that the end of business? So you can have some time to meet people face to face and crack open a bottle of Barola, you know. So that's life. So it was one of those things that you just asked. It's really about understanding money is just the byproduct of what you want, but you must realize what you really want from the heart and the gut.
I think it was also important at the stage of your life when you had that realization because it gives you to look at that next chapter in a different way. And, like we've been currently going through a purging process in our house right now, just simply because, you're on the hunt and gather for so many years
Mm.
when you begin and you start to realize, okay, we don't need to do that anymore. And I think you do start to look at things a little bit different, which kind of takes me to my next question. I thought this was a very thoughtful one to kind of share with you and get some insight. So, we know that many people feel stuck in their careers, and that is really due at times because there's no longer alignment with values. And a lot of that may have to do with the current corporate climate, it might have to do with the current labor market. But what's the first honest question you think they should ask themselves before they start to make a change? And I should also highlight the fact that, unemployment in the United States has certainly ticked up quite a bit, especially in the African American community. So it is a lot of questions you would want to ask, but generally speaking, what are
It's
your thoughts?
do you know your movement and how you change in the US? It's we mirror what you're going through.
Mm,
We do mirror that. And one thing we have to turn to ask ourselves, and you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be really frank. And sometimes our ego doesn't allow us to ask these questions. And what we need to look in the mirror and ask is this: what are we doing today that's going to take us closer to what we really want out of life? Or is it taking us further away? And that comes to some of the values, what we think our values are. Now, your guests may, people watching may say, values, values. I was the same. I used to poop to values. It's nonsense. Just give me the money and I'll be happy. It
mm,
doesn't work that way because most people think, think the lack of ability. We work hard
mm,
and we work, most of us work with great ethics and we work really, really hard, Greg. But to me, it's the lack of alignment and the alignment to your values. Why are you doing 24 hours? Why are
mm,
you working here? Why are you traveling to here? Why do you invest in this? So we have to take a little step back
mm,
and just think, instead of working harder, let's just step back, revalue, and be honest with ourselves.
mm,
What are the questions that, and answer them questions about where you're going, what you want out of life,
mm,
because in the long run, it's going to give you clarity. And sometimes with all the fog, of all the enjoyment, yeah, I've got a nice car, I've got this, but I'm up to here with debt.
mm,
So we have to just to pull back. And when that hit me, the tears followed.
mm,
I thought, Greg, I just wasted a decade, 2 decades. Because now, when I mean we and my wife are thriving, we're thriving because in a way of our happiness, we're
mm,
getting fulfillment. You don't have to be a millionaire guru to be
mhm,
happy.
mhm,
And it's one thing that we don't chase anymore is
mm,
happiness. We chase money, we
mm,
chase cars. In some rudimentary, we chase sex, we chase this
mm.
rather than chasing happiness. I've known friends of mine who are earning $60,000 a month, but they have a better lifestyle than me.
Oh. So, that kind of makes me, you know, ask you a question, which it's probably going to sound strange, but if we look at things like money and work or success, and we needed to kind of reevaluate it, what is it that we would have to unlearn about those things?
Well, let's think when we were at school. What did they used to say? Greg, work hard, do your education, go to university, work hard, and we automatically think it's a God-given right that leads to freedom, that leads to growth or whatever. It doesn't. We know it doesn't, because what we have to do, if we think we're working them kind of hours, them kind of days, it's going to pay off. The
Mm.
truth is, we get into a sort of delusional state. I'm doing 11, 12 hours, Jack. Well, the guy over there is doing 8 and he's living better than you and he's happy and he's healthier.
Mm.
So what we have to do, try and create something that has a little bit of an alignment to what we want. And that has to have some kind of leverage. It can't just be one thing. If you look where we are now, and if you go to most households, both parents are working.
Mm.
When back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, even in the US and the UK, one household income you could survive on. You still had an holiday. This mother still retired with a good pension. Can't do that now. So for me, we have to unlearn and get that belief out that working just solely hard gets you what you want. It doesn't. I'm afraid it doesn't.
Yeah. It's, as a question, it's such an obvious, way of maybe thinking about it. But when you're in the trenches and you're applying it to the day-to-day decisions that you make, it's
Digging out, dig.
harder. But that really takes me to the last question I wanted to ask you before we move into our final question with something to say. So if you were really able to start all over again, and it's interesting because when I've asked this question before and I say, oh, if you were able to start all over again, and they would say, okay, do I have the benefit of the knowledge of everything I have, or do I just start all over? But
Yes. If you knew hindsight, you could go into the future, take it back. Right, I know this.
But if you were able to start again today with everything that you know, what priorities would you differently do within just the first 12 months?
Oh, my days. I would go for really focusing on clarity over speed,
Hmm.
because that's what lost my first home.
Hmm.
I had an idea, I didn't work it out, I jumped from an employer, and within 18 months, I was on the streets.
Oh.
So if I had clarity, worked it out properly, I don't think I would have lost that home. And the other one is mentorship over ego. And us men are like that, because when we think, there's so many people out there that has walked in our path. Now, anyone who's listening to this, what if you've got a business plan or whatever you're doing, whatever in life, have you gone and asked someone who's successful? Have you just gone and bought them a coffee? Because most successful people would love to give their experience to you. It really, really was. But most important for me is really staying with my health. I should have stayed with my health, my faith early. I should have found that bounding and keep that, because what's the point of getting to what you class as the promised land, having a few million in the bank, and you spending the majority of that money to change your health around? I should have finalized this in my head earlier. And it's them first 12 months. Do I sell my devil to the soul, to my soul to the devil, so I can grow quickly? Or do I prioritize my clarity over speed? Do I go and get some information of people and slow it down? Because if I was to say, and this might spoil the bandwagon of this podcast, if someone asked me in the UK, and they have done, I'm going to open a restaurant, I would say no. Hang on for at least 3 to 4 years. Let the economy settle down, what's in the UK at the moment. Let it settle down. Those who are already established are growing. Those new ones, we've had 2 in my town. They've been open 8 months and failed. Closed. So prioritize clarity over speed. Mentorship over your ego. And we've all got egos. Go and get the information of people. Go to people like yourself who's worked around the world and understands hospitality.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so we have one more question, which is our something to say question, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a few hospitality, tourism, culinary related questions. So this is completely unrehearsed. So, your favorite hotel?
For me, I'm one of I'm one of these who lives in the UK. It's not all about London. Right? So for me, it has to be the Chewton Glen in the New Forest. So it's not far from London. Superb. The service is immaculate. It's such a beautiful hotel. Some of the big stars fly in there with helicopters. Rod Stewart goes there every so often. So Shooting Glen for me, definitely.
All right. So restaurant menu, do you select beef, chicken, pork, or seafood?
Seafood, straight away. I love seafood.
Airline, do you do first class or coach?
First class. Greg, we're not all on your money, you know. First class. I do on the odd occasions have a tendency to say let's treat ourselves and go business class, but no, I'd rather keep the money in my pocket.
All right. So transportation, do you do cabs or rideshare?
Cabs. Rideshare? We're British, Greg. We're British.
Well, you know what? I had a conversation with someone the other day, and I said, you know what? British cabs are like, in my world, the Cadillac. Well, they are Rolls Royce in a number of cases. So they've got excellent, excellent vehicles. So, all right. So last hospitality related question. And, I think as we kind of think of how broad our industry is, one area that tends to get overlooked is the cruise line industry. So, when was the last time you took a cruise and where did you go?
I'm going to be shameful. I've not done one. I was in the States in November, and for Thanksgiving, and my family, what was there, they were getting ready to go on a cruise. And every time I asked someone, "Oh, you must go, you must go." So, Greg, we will be on one within the next 18 months. I need to go on the cruise because I'm fed up with people saying what a good time they had. And I need to get the experience of this. I've not done a cruise yet.
Wow. So it's a bucket list item, right? And there are fantastic cruise lines that you should consider. All right. Well, listen, so here we are at our final question. And this is one that we certainly enjoy getting a response from those who we interview. So the podcast is entitled Something to Say. So what do you have to say?
Be true to yourself. Be happy. Chase happiness. Go for it because you are worth it.
Wow. And I love the direct message that allows for the individual to own it. And I think that is amongst the reasons why we ask that question. It certainly helps people apply their passion to help them live a more fulfilled life. So, Fritz, this has been amazing. And I could talk to you forever because the passion and the insights that you have shared certainly are a great way to provide a more impactful insight for our listeners when we talk about what it means to have passion and what it means for in your life. So it's been a pleasure having you on the show. We're going to invite you to come back at some point in time, but I thank you so much and I appreciate you spending time with us today.
No, thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for your time. And Greg, my home is open to you and your partner. Please come visit when you come into the UK. It's not always London. Just take a left and come down to Devon and come and see us. Our home is open. Thank you.
I look forward to it. And listeners, that's a wrap for this episode of Something to Say podcast. And we encourage you to stay tuned for more inspiring conversations, some from the U.S., probably some from other countries, with the voices of individuals from diverse backgrounds sharing your passion. Until next time, this has been Greg DeShields.
Thank you for tuning in to Something to Say. We trust you found some valuable insights and takeaways that can help you find your passion. Don't miss out on future episodes. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred platform. We value your feedback and suggestions, so let us know how we can serve you better. Keep the conversation going and stay inspired until we meet again. Take care and happy listening.